So in the last video, I kind of came out with my position. I think that shared, team shot calling, shared shot calling is inherently better than just having one shot caller. And that's for a multitude of factors that I went over in my last video. However, I did mention at the very end, there are some teams historically, like Team Liquid, that won an international with just one shot caller being Kuroki. And there's a lot of teams in the kind of the amateur Dota scene that do operate on this one shot caller system. And even though I think that if you look at everything in a vacuum, that if we're working with artificial intelligence that are supposed to be like AI that are simulating human behaviors, I think this more shared system is better, quite honestly. But we're not AI, we are humans, and I think the leveraging AI and research can help inform us of some things, but at the end of the day we are working with people. And for some teams, this one shot caller kind of expectation is going to be how the team prefers to operate. So let me go over some of the issues with having a one-shot caller system. And those issues were that each player on a team is going to have kind of an artificial role regarding like the role that they're playing in Dota. If they're the mid player, they're going to be critically thinking a lot more about mid-specific things. They're not going to be thinking as much about warding and other things that the other roles are more focused on. And everybody goes through these phases of playing really well and playing really bad, and it kind of goes up and down, and it's in the cycle. And we can call this performance spin and performance pulse. Whereas the spin of an individual's performance is how frequently their kind of aptitude goes up and down. And then the pulse is the intensity of those changes. So we all have our own individual performance spin and performance pulse that's, individual to us. And, if you are the one shot caller on a team, there will be times where, your team plays a series where you are on a peak of your performance. You got a great read of the game. You're making all the right shot calls and you win. It's dominant. Everything feels great. But the very next series, if it's maybe a few days later, you might be in one of these lows where you're not getting that traction. You don't have a good read on the game, and your own individual performance and your shot calling will not be as good as if you are at one of, your peaks. So with that in mind, there are going to be some situations where, now I can see this in a league like RD2L, where you might have a 7K player and maybe a 7K player, a 4K player, and then like a 2K, 1K, and like the stratification is crazy to where, if we look at this, kind of scale of Dota skill, the 7K player, he's going to have his, performance, kind of performance phases, his performance phase and pulse, but his performance phase, phase and pulse is going to exist up here in the stratosphere, where if this is Dota skill, I'm writing this sideways. Man, that's actually not bad, is it? Actually, no. So this is your Dota skill on, on this bar, and down here is time. So a 7K player is always going to exist in a stratosphere where his pulses, his spins and pulses, his fluctuation of performance over time is still going to exist up here, in the stratosphere, and everybody else's on this hypothetical RD2L team might be existing all the way down here, to where even when the 7K player is on one of his lows, his historic lows, he might still have the best sense of the game, where he's still in position to be the best shot caller. So in one of these situations, whether your team has a player that wants to be the one shot caller, or maybe the entire team wants him to be the one shot caller, or if you're in a position where it just makes the most sense, he's the highest MMR player, and even at his historic lows of performance, he still has the best grasp of the game, then you may still want to, employ this one shot caller method. So I'm going to go over some things that individual can do to be the best individual responsible as the sole shot caller on a team. So, and I think this is important because I think that there is a degree of skill in this, and to develop and harness a skill, you have to be aware of, the mechanisms and whatnot of what it takes to be a shot caller in one of these task environments that is, complex and stressful. And you also have to be willing to understand that you are going to need to rely on your team for a lot of things to help make you be the best sole shot caller for your team. So the first thing that you need to recognize, if you are this, the one individual shot caller, on your team, that's expectation, is that you have to recognize that you don't have all the answers and your knowledge is incomplete. So you are going to be, conceptualizing your idea of the game plan moving forward, what you think your team should do. All that conceptualization is going to be kind of developed primarily from the information that you have in the role that you're playing. If you are playing as a pos 5, you're going to have a lot more of the specialty information about warding. And, a lot of, what you're thinking is, going to be playing, away from their wards, kind of guarding your own wards. A lot of your things going to be, kind of circling around that. You're not going to have as much perspective on some of the other elements of gameplay that the other just Dota positions are more focused on. So with that in mind, you really want to understand that your knowledge of the holistic picture of the game is incomplete, and you should really want your team to speak up and fill you in on the information that they think is important so that you could be as informed as possible as you continue to be the one that is, in that assertive role, making a lot of the team-oriented decisions. The second thing that I think is important is you have to be willing to take risks and trust your teammates. Even in our hypothetical example, where we have the one 7K player just existing up here in the stratosphere, he might have the best idea about how heroes work, what the meta is, whatever it is. But at the bottom line, not everyone is going to just switch their hero pool to play the most meta heroes. Everyone's going to have, individual differences in at the fundamental level of how they approach the game and how they see the game. There's going to be some players that are more aggressive in nature. There's going to be some players that are more defensive in nature, and that'll reflect in the kinds of heroes that they like to play. There's a lot of factors that go into that. So if you're drafting for your team and you're thinking about, position 4 to pick, you're thinking, oh, it's the current patch. Rubik is so broken. Tusk is so broken. What hero do you want? Do you want Tusk or Rubik? And your pos 4 player says, I want Omni Knight. I hear so often that a player says something that kind of goes against the correct Dota knowledge, and it just gets shut down. That's so stupid. I'm not picking that. What do you want, Rubik or Tusk? Bad. That is so bad. Let alone are you stripping the hero from the hero that they're going to enjoy playing, the hero that they want to play, probably the hero that they're better at. You shutting them down like that is completely just disenfranchising them from ever wanting to speak up and contribute anything again. It's going to take away from your ability to make better decisions, more well-informed decisions for your team. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, as a captain myself, and just as kind of the arbiter of this information to you, I would rather. It's also important for you to be ready on a whim to change plans in response to ideas, new information, or criticism from your teammates. So if you say, hey guys, if you're playing on the Dire and you want to really secure the Roshan, you might say, hey guys, let's go fight, go just exist in their triangle. We'll cut off their farm from this side of the map. We'll know for a guaranteed fact where they're most likely going to come from, angle-wise on the map, and we could really secure the next Roshan. That's going to be really big for us moving on. That might be totally valid. But if some of your teammates speak up and say, give information that might make that a bad idea, if you double down on what you say and say, it doesn't matter, just go, just roll with it, if you're not open to really synthesizing that new information in your decision and really think critically about like how might that affect this idea that I have, you're really not going to be making, you know, facilitating that development of social safety within your team, and you're also, you know, not going to be making ultimately the best decisions, because there's that information that you're not privy to that you really need to take into consideration. I really want you to be excited and encourage that and nourish that information to be shared with you. And that goes to my next point, is that as a sole shot caller, there is going to be a lot more responsibility on you. There's going to be a lot more burden on you. Like, you are going to have a much more sizable role to play than the others. And that's one of the things that makes this role difficult, and oftentimes why you might need to undergo, that might be why you're watching this video, because you really need to like learn the mechanisms, train on this, and practice this role, because this role is such a big responsibility and you are going to be carrying a larger burden, you know, than the other players. And part of filling this role successfully is going to be learning how to lean on your teammates. How, you know, you are not going to be privy to all the information of the game. You are going to need to know, when do your teammates feel strong to fight? Like, what are your teammates' item timings? You know, what are your teammates' specialty information that you want access to so you can better inform your decisions? You need to learn and practice and figure out heuristics and strategies on how to get your teammates to speak up and communicate the information that you want to know. And a part of that is going to be learning, like, you know, how to ask that of them and how you want them to deliver that information, but also just learning to really lean on them, rely on them, and encourage them to speak up. And by developing this social safety, you're really developing this relationship where you might not have to, like, you know, there'll always be points where like you might have to ask for information that you need, but you want to slowly develop that person feeling comfortable enough with what the expectations are, that they're delivering you that information on their own, and you are always considering that, synthesizing, that information, and taking what they're sharing with you seriously. So those are my quick tips for a captain, or maybe not captain, but if you are the sole shot caller for your team, like, you really have to be privy on a lot of this social performance stuff, because so much can break down so easily if you are not really thinking about the team as a collective and you're only thinking about yourself. I do not want you to look at your role as the sole shot caller as this burden. You're the only competent player on the team. Everyone else is just weighing you down. If you come into this series, this team, with that kind of train of thinking, you are setting yourself up for failure, setting your team up for failure, setting yourself to not, you're setting yourself and the team up just to not have fun, not enjoy yourselves, and ultimately, most likely, not win. So no matter how good of a Dota player you are, you will be held back by just how well you can manage your team and how well you can maximize your team and your team's kind of social performance.